On October 14, 2022, the British tabloid newspaper The Daily Star began a livestream of an iceberg lettuce next to a photograph of Liz Truss, the recently appointed Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. This followed an opinion piece in The Economist that compared the brevity of Truss's premiership to the shelf life of a lettuce, with the October 2022 United Kingdom government crisis occurring just weeks into her tenure and leading many commentators to opine that Truss's resignation would be imminent. She announced her resignation as Prime Minister on October 20, 2022, before the lettuce had wilted, leading the Daily Star to declare the lettuce's victory over Truss. Early life. Mary Elizabeth Truss was born on July 26, 1975 in Oxford, England, to John Truss and Priscilla Truss. She is a descendant of Charles Truss, after whom Truss's Island on the River Thames is named. Truss has three younger brothers, Chris, Patrick, and Francis. From an early age, she has been known by her middle name. Her father is an emeritus professor of pure mathematics at the University of Leeds, while her mother was a nurse and teacher. Truss has described her parents as being to the left of Labour. Her mother was a member of the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament. When Truss later stood for election to Parliament as a Conservative, her mother agreed to campaign for her, while her father declined to do so. Truss's parents divorced in 2003. At the 2004 Leeds City Council election, her mother unsuccessfully stood for election as a Liberal Democrat. The family moved to Paisley, Renfrewshire, in Scotland when she was 4 years old, living there from 1979 to 1985, with Truss attending West Primary School. She then attended Roundhay School, a comprehensive school in the Roundhay area of Leeds, which she later said had let down children, a claim disputed by others. Aged 12, she spent a year in Burnaby, British Columbia, where she attended Parkrest Elementary School while her father taught at Simon Fraser University. Truss has praised the coherent curriculum and the Canadian attitude that it was really good to be top of the class, which she contrasts to her education at Roundhay School. Truss was remembered by adolescent classmates as a studious girl with geeky friends. She reportedly had an interest in social issues such as homelessness. She read philosophy, politics, and economics at Merton College, Oxford, graduating in 1996. Truss was active in the Liberal Democrats. She was president of Oxford University Liberal Democrats and a member of the National Executive Committee of Liberal Democrat Youth and Students. During her time as a Liberal Democrat, Truss supported the legalization of cannabis and the abolition of the monarchy, and campaigned against the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act 1994. Truss joined the Conservative Party in 1996. Professional career. From 1996 to 2000, Truss worked for Shell, during which time she qualified as a chartered management accountant in 1999. In 2000, Truss was employed by Cable and Wireless and rose to economic director before leaving in 2005. After losing her first two elections, Truss became the full-time deputy director of reform in January 2008. Where she advocated more rigorous academic standards in schools, a greater focus on tackling serious and organized crime, and urgent action to deal with Britain's falling competitiveness. She co-authored The Value of Mathematics, Fit for Purpose, A New Level, and Back to Black, Budget 2009 paper, among other reports. Political career. Truss served as the chair of the Lewisham-Deptford Conservative Association from 1998 to 2000. Truss unsuccessfully contested the Greenwich-London Borough Council elections in 1998 and 2002. On May 4, 2006, she was elected as a councillor for Eltham South in the 2006 Greenwich-London Borough Council election. Truss did not seek re-election to the council on May 6, 2010, with the 2010 UK general election being announced on April 6, 2010, the dissolution of Parliament on April 12, 2010 and the last day to file MP nomination papers April 20, 2010. Parliamentary candidatures. At the 2001 UK general election, Truss stood for the constituency of Hemsworth in West Yorkshire, a safe seat for the Labour Party. She came a distant second, but increased the Conservative vote by 3.2%. Before the 2005 UK general election, the parliamentary candidate for Calder Valley, Sue Catling, was pressured to resign by the local Conservative Association, whereupon Truss was selected to fight the seat, which is also in West Yorkshire. Truss narrowly lost the election to the Labour Party incumbent. Under David Cameron as Conservative leader, Truss was added to the party's A-list. In October 2009, she was selected for the South West Norfolk seat by members of the Constituency Conservative Association. She won over 50% of the vote in the first round of the final against 5 other candidates. Shortly after her selection, some members of the Constituency Association objected to Truss's selection, due to her failing to declare a prior affair with the married Conservative MP Mark Field. A motion was proposed to terminate Truss's candidature, but this was defeated by 132 votes to 37 at a general meeting of the association's members 3 weeks later. Parliamentary career. Following her election to the House of Commons on May 6, 2010, Truss campaigned for issues including the retention of the RAF Tornado base at RAF Marham in her constituency. Over 7 months she asked 13 questions in the Commons about RAF Marham, secured a special debate on the subject, wrote dozens of letters to ministers and collected signatures on a petition which was delivered to Downing Street. From the start of her parliamentary career, she also lobbied for the dualling of the A11 west of Thetford. The work was completed in 2014. With an eye on Thetford Forest, in her constituency, she spoke out against the proposal to sell off forests and played a leading role in preventing a waste incinerator being built at King's Lynn. In March 2011, Truss wrote a paper for the liberal think tank Centre Forum in which she argued for an end to bias against serious academic subjects in the education system so that social mobility can be improved. Truss wrote a further paper for the same think tank in May 2012, in which she argued for change in the structure of the childcare market in Britain. In October 2011, Truss founded the Free Enterprise Group, which has been supported by over 40 other Conservative MPs. In September 2011, together with 4 other members of the Free Enterprise Group, she had co-authored After the Coalition, a book which sought to challenge the consensus that Britain's economic decline is inevitable by arguing for the return of a more entrepreneurial and meritocratic culture. Britannia Unchained was published on September 13, 2012 by the same authors as above. In Chapter 4, which is named Work Ethic, the book states, once they enter the workplace, the British are among the worst idlers in the world. We work among the lowest hours. We retire early and our productivity is poor. During a BBC leadership debate in July 2022, Truss said that the authors had each written a different chapter of the book and that Dominic Raab had written Chapter 4 which contains those claims. Raab later remarked that the authors had taken collective responsibility for the book. As part of a serialization in the Daily Telegraph, Truss wrote an article previewing Britannia Unchained. The book was promoted by its publishers as the work of the Conservative Party's rising stars. Truss has championed Britain following Germany's lead in allowing people to have tax-free and less heavily regulated mini-jobs. Since Truss published a paper on the policy for the Free Enterprise Group in February 2012, the policy has been examined by the Treasury as a policy to promote growth. Truss has campaigned for improved teaching of more rigorous school subjects, especially mathematics. She noted in 2012 that only 20% of British students studied maths to 18, and called for maths classes to be compulsory for all those in full-time education. Truss herself studied maths and further maths at A level. She argued in 2011 that comprehensive school pupils were being missold easy, low-value subjects to boost school results. Comprehensive school pupils were 6 times as likely to take media studies at A level as privately educated pupils. Truss also criticized the over-reliance on calculators to the detriment of mental arithmetic. From March 2011, Truss was a member of the Justice Select Committee, remaining on the committee until her appointment as a government minister. Ministerial career. Junior ministerial career. On September 4, 2012, Truss was appointed as Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State at the Department for Education, responsible for childcare and early learning, assessment, qualifications, curriculum reform, behavior and attendance, and school food review. In this role, she developed some of the policy areas that she had pursued as a backbencher. In January 2013, she announced proposals to reform A-levels, by concentrating examinations at the end of 2-year courses. She sought to improve British standards in maths for fear that children are falling behind those in Asian countries, and led a fact-finding visit to schools and teacher training centers in Shanghai in February 2014 to see how children there have become the best in the world at maths. Truss also outlined plans to reform childcare in England, which would overhaul childcare qualifications and increase the maximum number of children relative to adults in a care establishment, with the intention of widening the availability of childcare along with increasing pay and qualifications among staff. The proposed reforms were broadly welcomed by some organisations such as the Charity for Children, the Confederation of British Industry and the College of West Anglia. However, the proposals met opposition from others. The TUC General Secretary Francis O'Grady and the then Shadow Education Secretary Stephen Twigg were among those criticising the reforms, and were echoed by some parents and childcare bodies, such as the charity National Day Nurseries Association. The columnist Polly Toynbee was highly critical of the minister's plans and challenged Truss to demonstrate how to care for 2 babies alongside 4 toddlers on her own. Truss responded to Toynbee's challenge by saying that being an early educator was a very demanding job, requiring great and specialist expertise, for which she was not trained. In the event, aspects of the reforms relating to relaxation of childcare ratios were blocked by the Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg, who said, "The response, not just from nurseries, but overwhelmingly from parent groups was they thought this was a bad idea." Environment Secretary. In a July 15, 2014 cabinet reshuffle, Truss was appointed Secretary of State for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, replacing Owen Paterson. In apparent contrast to her predecessor, Truss declared that she fully believed that climate change is happening, and that human beings have contributed to that. She became a member of the Privy Council the next day. At the Conservative Party conference in September 2014, Truss made a speech in which she said, "We import 2/3 of our cheese, that is a disgrace, and in December, I'll be in Beijing, opening up new pork markets." The awkwardness of her delivery led her to be widely mocked, and clips of the speech went viral. In November 2014, Truss launched a new 10-year bee and pollinator strategy to try to reverse the trend of falling bee populations, including a strategy to revive traditional meadows which provide the most fertile habitat for pollinators. In July 2015, she approved the limited temporary lifting of an EU ban on the use of 2 neonicotinoid pesticides, enabling their use for 120 days on about 5% of England's oilseed rape crop to ward off the cabbage stem flea beetle. Campaigners in 2012 warned that pesticides were shown to harm bees by damaging their renowned ability to navigate home. Truss cut taxpayer subsidies for solar panels on agricultural land, as her view was that the land could be better used to grow crops, food and vegetables. She described farming and food as hotbeds of innovation and promoted the production and export of British food. In March 2015, she was one of 2 cabinet ministers to vote against the government's successful proposal to introduce plain packaging for cigarettes, in what was technically a free vote. Justice Secretary and Lord Chancellor. On July 14, 2016, Truss was appointed as Secretary of State for Justice and Lord Chancellor in Theresa May's first ministry. Truss became the first woman to hold either position and the first female Lord Chancellor in the 1,000-year history of the office. May's decision to appoint her was criticised by the then Minister of State for Justice Lord Foulkes, who resigned from the government, questioning whether Truss would have the clout to be able to stand up to the Prime Minister when necessary, on behalf of the judges. Truss herself said that he did not contact her before going public with his criticism, and she had never met or spoken to him. In November 2016, Truss was further criticised, including by the former Attorney General Dominic Grieve and the Criminal Bar Association, for failing to support more robustly the judiciary and the principle of judicial independence, after 3 judges of the Divisional Court came under attack from politicians and from the Daily Mail for ruling against the government in R.V. Secretary of State for exiting the European Union. Lord Falconer, the former Lord Chancellor, who had previously suggested that, like her immediate predecessors Chris Grayling and Michael Gove, Truss lacked the essential legal expertise that the Constitution requires, called for her to be sacked as Justice Secretary as her perceived inadequate response signals to the judges that they have lost their constitutional protector. Truss denied she had failed to defend the judges. An independent judiciary is the cornerstone of the rule of law, vital to our Constitution and freedoms, she wrote. It is my duty as Lord Chancellor to defend that independence. I swore to do so under my oath of office. I take that very seriously, and I will always do so. She also said that the independent judiciary was robust enough to withstand attack by the Daily Telegraph and Daily Mail. However, in March 2017, the Lord Chief Justice, Lord Thomas of Cumjeed, told the House of Lords Constitution Select Committee that Truss was completely and utterly wrong to say she could not criticize the media and reiterated the importance of protecting judges. Following a significant rise in prison violence incidents in 2015 and 2016, in November 2016 Truss announced a £1.3 billion investment programme in the prison service and the recruitment of 2,500 additional prison officers, partly reversing the cuts made under the previous coalition government. Chief Secretary to the Treasury. Following the 2017 UK general election, Truss was moved on June 11 to the position of Chief Secretary to the Treasury, attending the cabinet but not a full member of it, in what was seen by some as a demotion. Truss developed an enthusiasm for cultivating her presence on Twitter and Instagram. The Times described this as an unorthodox approach that had won her fans. She was also closely involved in the launch of the free market campaign group, Freer. Some of her civil servants were reported as finding her tenure as chief secretary exhausting, because of her demanding work schedule and her habit of asking officials multiplication questions at random intervals. In June 2018, Truss gave a speech outlining her declared commitment to freedom and individual liberty. She criticized regulations that get in the way of people's lives and warned that raising taxes could see the Conservatives being crushed at the polls. In particular, she criticized ministerial colleagues who she said should realize that it's not macho just to demand more money. It's much tougher to demand better value and challenge the blob of vested interests within your department. In 2019, Truss declared that she could be a candidate for the leadership of the Conservative Party to succeed May. However, she ultimately elected not to stand, and instead endorsed Boris Johnson, International Trade Secretary. After Boris Johnson became Prime Minister, Truss was tipped for promotion in return for her support during his leadership campaign, during which she advised Johnson on economic policy, and was the architect of plans to cut taxes for people earning over £50,000. Consequently, it was thought she would be appointed Chancellor of the Exchequer or Business Secretary, but she was instead promoted to the position of Secretary of State for International Trade and President of the Board of Trade. Following the resignation of Amber Rudd, Truss was additionally appointed Minister for Women and Equalities. Twice in September 2019, Truss said that the Department for International Trade had inadvertently allowed shipping of radio spares and an air cooler to Saudi Arabia in contravention of an order of the Court of Appeal, which found that UK arms sales to Saudi Arabia for use in the war in Yemen were unlawful. While Truss apologised to a Commons Committee on Arms Export Controls, opposition MPs said her apology was insufficient and called for her to resign for breaking the law. On March 19, 2020, Truss introduced to Parliament the Trade Act 2021, which established the legal framework for the UK to conduct trade deals with nations around the world. On July 7, 2020, Truss announced the lifting of a year-long ban on the export of arms and military equipment to Saudi Arabia. She said that there is not a clear risk that the export of arms and military equipment to Saudi Arabia might be used in the commission of a serious violation of international humanitarian law. In August 2020, a number of meetings Truss held with the Institute of Economic Affairs were removed from the public record because they were recategorized as personal discussions, which the Labour Party said raised concerns about integrity, transparency, and honesty in public office. Truss undertook negotiations for a post-Brexit free trade agreement between the UK and Japan. An agreement between the two countries was struck in September 2020, which Truss said would result in 99% of exports to Japan being tariff-free. It was the first major trade deal the UK had signed since leaving the European Union and was hailed as a historic moment by Truss. It mostly copied the existing trade deal the EU had agreed with Japan. This was followed by newly negotiated trade deals with Australia, New Zealand, Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein. In December 2020, Truss made a speech on equality policy in which she stated that the UK focused too heavily on fashionable race, sexuality, and gender issues at the expense of poverty and geographical disparity. In the speech, she announced that the government and civil service would no longer be receiving unconscious bias training. Foreign Secretary. On September 15, 2021, during a cabinet reshuffle, Johnson promoted Truss from International Trade Secretary to Secretary of State for Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs. At the 2021 United Nations Climate Change Conference in Glasgow, she said that France had acted unacceptably during the Jersey fishing dispute. In October 2021, she called on Russia to intervene in the Belarus-European Union border crisis and said she wanted a closer trading and investment relationship with the Gulf Cooperation Council, which includes Saudi Arabia and Qatar. In November 2021, Truss and her Israeli counterpart Yair Lapid announced a new decade-long deal aimed at stopping Iran from developing nuclear weapons. In December 2021, she met her Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov in Stockholm, urging Russia to seek peace in Ukraine in the context of the Russo-Ukrainian War. On November 5, 2021, she called for a ceasefire in the Tigray War between Ethiopian rebel groups and the Ethiopian government led by Abiy Ahmed, saying that there is no military solution and that negotiations are needed to avoid bloodshed and deliver lasting peace. In January 2022, the former Australian Prime Minister Paul Keating, who serves on the International Board of the China Development Bank, accused Truss of making demented comments about Chinese military aggression in the Pacific, saying that Britain suffers delusions of grandeur and relevance deprivation. Truss was appointed in December 2021 as the British government's chief negotiator with the EU, following the resignation of Lord Frost. On January 30, 2022, she told the BBC's Sunday morning programme that we are supplying and offering extra support into our Baltic allies across the Black Sea, as well as supplying the Ukrainians with defensive weapons. The Russian diplomat Maria Zakharova commented, using social media, that the Baltic states are located on or near the Baltic Sea and not the Black Sea, which is 700 miles away from the Baltic. Truss's scheduled trip to Ukraine was cancelled after she tested positive for COVID-19 on January 31, 2022. On February 6, 2022, Truss warned that China must respect the Falklands' sovereignty and defended the Falkland Islands as part of the British family after China backed Argentina's claim over islands. Russia and Ukraine. July 2022 Conservative Party leadership election. On July 10, 2022, Truss announced her intention to run in the Conservative Party leadership election to replace Boris Johnson. She pledged to cut taxes on day one if elected, and said she would fight the election as a Conservative and govern as a Conservative, adding that she would also take immediate action to help people deal with the cost of living. She said she would cancel a planned rise in corporation tax and reverse the recent increase in national insurance rates, funded by delaying the date by which the national debt is planned to fall, as part of a long-term plan to bring down the size of the state and the tax burden. On July 20, Truss and former Chancellor of the Exchequer Rishi Sunak were chosen by Conservative Party MPs to be put forward to the membership for the final leadership vote. She finished second in the final MP's ballot, receiving 113 votes to Sunak's 137 votes. In the membership vote, it was announced on September 5 that 57.4% of ballots were for Truss, making her the new leader. Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Appointment. Following the resignation as Prime Minister of Boris Johnson, Truss, as the duly elected leader of the Conservatives, the majority party in Parliament, was received by Elizabeth II at Balmoral Castle near Aberdeen, Scotland, the only Prime Minister not received by the Queen at Buckingham Palace. Truss was appointed the new Prime Minister of the United Kingdom in one of the Queen's last official acts before her death 2 days later on September 8, 2022 at the age of 96. On September 10, 2022, Truss and other senior members of Parliament pledged a new oath of allegiance to Charles III in a special session of Parliament. This was not a requirement, as MPs swear an oath to the monarch and their heirs and successors at the start of each Parliament. Cabinet. Truss began appointing her cabinet and to other government positions on September 6, 2022. She appointed Therese Coffey, a close friend and ally, as Deputy Prime Minister and Health Secretary. Truss appointed Kwasi Kwarteng as Chancellor of the Exchequer, James Cleverly as Foreign Secretary and Suella Braverman as Home Secretary. For the first time in British political history, no white men held positions in the four great offices of state, namely Prime Minister, Chancellor of the Exchequer, Foreign Secretary and Home Secretary. This was the case for just 38 days before she dismissed Kwarteng and replaced him with Jeremy Hunt. Braverman resigned as Home Secretary after 43 days, due to what she said was an honest mistake involving sharing secure information on a private phone. She was highly critical of Truss's leadership in her resignation letter. Truss replaced her with Grant Shapps. Popularity. A YouGov poll in October 2022 ranked Truss as the least popular UK Prime Minister in the company's polling history. Several other polls ranked her as extremely unpopular. Domestic policies. Shortly after her appointment, and in response to the cost of living crisis, Truss announced a 2-year cap on the price per unit for domestic energy supplies called the Energy Price Guarantee, which the government said would cap average household energy bills at £2,500 per year, while costing the state up to £100 billion. On September 23, 2022, Kwarteng announced a mini-budget that proposed cutting taxation significantly, abolishing the 45% top income tax rate, cutting the basic rate of income tax, cancelling rises in national insurance contributions and corporation tax, abolishing the proposed health and social care levy, and cutting stamp duty, policies that were to be funded by borrowing. The budget was poorly received by financial markets, blamed for a rapid fall in the value of the pound, and prompted a response from the Bank of England. The budget was criticized by the International Monetary Fund, U.S. President Joe Biden, the opposition Labour Party and many within Truss's party, including senior politicians Michael Gove and Grant Shapps. It was highly unpopular with the public, and contributed to a large fall popularity of the Conservative Party and for Truss personally. After initially defending the mini-budget, Truss instructed Cuerden to reverse the abolition of the 45% income tax additional rate on October 3. She later reversed the cut in corporation tax and sacked Cuerden, replacing him with Jeremy Hunt on October 14. Hunt reversed the remaining policies announced in the mini-budget, with the exception of the cuts to national insurance contributions and the raising of stamp duty. Hunt also reduced the energy price guarantee from 2 years to 6 months. Foreign policy. During her first 3 weeks as Prime Minister, Truss had a speaking role before hundreds of world leaders at the Queen's funeral, and held a round of diplomatic meetings on the sideline at the United Nations General Assembly on September 21, as well as giving a speech in which she said that she wanted people to keep more of their earnings. Resignation. On October 20, 2022, in her 45th day in office, Truss announced her resignation as leader of the Conservative Party and her intention to resign as Prime Minister, saying that given the situation, she could not deliver the mandate on which she was elected by the Conservative Party. In the same announcement, Truss said that after speaking with the chairman of the 1922 committee, Sir Graham Brady, they both agreed that there would be a leadership election to be completed within the next week. Her resignation as Prime Minister was accepted by Charles III at an audience held at Buckingham Palace. She was succeeded by Rishi Sunak as leader of the Conservative Party on October 24, and advised Charles III to summon Sunak for an audience and for appointment as the new Prime Minister on October 25. She became the shortest-serving Prime Minister of the United Kingdom in history. The short length of her premiership was the subject of much ridicule, including a livestream of a head of lettuce comparing the shelf life of the vegetable to her remaining tenure. On October 24, Rishi Sunak was chosen to succeed Truss as leader of the Conservative Party and succeeded her as Prime Minister the following day. Truss said that she would remain in the House of Commons as a backbencher. Political positions. Economics. Truss is known for her economically liberal views and her support for free trade. She supports the neoliberal philosophy of supply-side economics, often referred to derogatorily as trickle-down economics. She founded the Free Enterprise Group of Conservative MPs, a pro-free market collection of parliamentarians arguing for a more entrepreneurial economy and fewer employment laws. After the September 2022 mini-budget, Truss fired her Chancellor of the Exchequer, Kwasi Cuerden, after 38 days in office. She replaced him with Jeremy Hunt, leading Faisal Islam of BBC News to write that Trussonomics is effectively dead. Foreign policy. During her first 3 weeks as Prime Minister, Truss had a speaking role before hundreds of world leaders at the Queen's funeral, and held a round of diplomatic meetings on the sideline at the United Nations General Assembly on September 21, as well as giving a speech in which she said that she wanted people to keep more of their earnings. Brexit. Social and cultural issues. On culture, Truss has said that the Conservative Party should reject the zero-sum game of identity politics. We reject the illiberalism of cancel culture, and we reject the soft bigotry of low expectations that holds so many people back. She has also suggested that Britain should not ignore the history of the British Empire, but should embrace the country's history warts and all if it is to compete with hostile states. In 2021, Truss voted to decriminalise abortion in Northern Ireland and abstained from voting on the introduction of buffer zones outside of abortion clinics. On LGBTQ and rights, Truss, according to Reuters, voted for gay marriage and has never voted against LGBTQ and rights, but has also moved to limit transgender rights. She spoke against gender self-identification, stating that medical checks are important. She said that she agreed that only women have a cervix. She also stated that the government departments should withdraw from Stonewall's Diversity Champions scheme. Despite initially supporting single-sex services being restricted on the basis of biological sex, she later said in February 2022 that the government was not interested in enacting such a measure. Energy and environment. As Environment Secretary, Truss supported a new strategy on bees and other pollinators, and advocated for gardeners to reduce lawnmower use to reduce impacts on them. See Environment Secretary section for more details. Truss signed the Conservative Environment Pledge on the website of the Conservative Environment Network, which has the support of 127 Conservative MPs. By signing the SEN pledge, Truss committed to achieving the UK's net zero target on reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 and in 2022, said that she wanted to do this in a way that doesn't harm businesses or consumers. As part of the energy crisis measures, a temporary suspension of green levies on domestic bills starting on October 1 was announced by the government, with schemes previously funded by the levies now being funded by government. As reported in the Daily Telegraph, Truss planned to scrap an environmental rule called the Nutrient Neutrality Requirement. This rule requires details from the developers about how their proposals might pollute rivers and wetlands and is implemented by the non-departmental public body Natural England. UK government support for nutrient neutrality is outlined in a policy paper from March 2022. Nutrient pollution, reducing the impact on protected sites. As part of a 2-year plan to ensure British energy security, Truss's government issued the 33rd round of offshore licences on October 7, 2022, with as many as 100 set to be awarded. Nearly 900 locations are being offered for exploration, with a fast track for parts of the North Sea near existing infrastructure. Opposition has come from Greenpeace, among others, who say that this energy policy benefits fossil fuel companies and will have little impact on prices. The ban on fracking for shale gas was lifted in September 2022 as the moratorium in place since 2019 was scrapped. The lifting of the ban has given companies the go-ahead to apply for planning permission to extract shale gas in the UK. Fracking was banned by the government in November 2019 after a report by the Oil and Gas Authority found that it was not possible at that time to predict the probability or strength of earthquakes caused by fracking. While PM Truss was wanting to ban solar farms from about 58% of agricultural land. In October 2022, her spokesperson confirmed that plans to ban solar farming from agricultural land were going ahead. While not against the use of solar panels, in August 2022 Truss said that she thought that it was one of the most depressing sights to see fields full of solar panels, instead of being full of crops or livestock. She has proposed that solar panel use should be restricted to commercial roofs. Truss has supported the construction of small modular reactors and large nuclear power facilities in different parts of the United Kingdom. While Foreign Secretary, she cautioned against Chinese involvement in British infrastructure, including nuclear power stations. As outlined in the government's hydrogen strategy and included as part of Truss's energy crisis solutions, building hydrogen production facilities was to be a key part of the UK energy supply. A company has been given the green light to build a 6-megawatt electrolyser at the Sizewell nuclear power station site and will involve the Freeport East Hydrogen Hub in Felixstowe/Harwich. Hydrogen production can involve water generation, called green, or fossil fuel generation, called grey and blue. A press release from Truss and the FCDO, after the 26 Colombian Pesos Summit in Glasgow, ended by saying that the UK was committed to supporting green enterprises and would help countries globally to deliver green, sustainable growth and economic development, while a statement by Truss at the end of a G7 Foreign and Development Ministers meeting in December 2021 outlined a commitment from them to work together to keep to the 27 Colombian pesos target for limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees. As part of the growth plan set out by government in September 2022, proposals were made to limit the ability of councils in England to block the construction of onshore wind farms, a reversal of policy implemented in 2016 as part of the National Planning Policy Framework. The government said that it would bring UK planning policy for onshore wind farming in line with existing rules, which could allow infrastructure to be more easily deployed. Personal life. In 2000, Truss married Hugh O'Leary, a fellow accountant. The couple have 2 daughters. From 2004 until mid-2005, she had an extramarital affair with the married MP Mark Field, whom the Conservative Party had appointed as her political mentor. She remains married to O'Leary. In 2022, Truss said, "I share the values of the Christian faith and the Church of England, but I'm not a regular practicing religious person."